Now we're going to write the resultsbyname.php script, and that's going to handle the search function itself. Let's open up a new text file, and first of all, let's simply write a couple of lines of PHP that make sure that the variable is being passed that we think it is from the last page. Let's just try and echo that variable to the browser. If we take a look back at our HTML page here, we'll see that when this form is executed, it's this input that sends data to the PHP script, and the name of the variable is name. So if you pop back to our PHP script and try to echo name, then we'll be able to test to see that the HTML file is acting the way we expect it to. So let's call that resultsbyname.php, and let's try to run that script now from here. So if we type in some data here and hit the submit button, as we can see, the data that we entered was successfully echoed to the browser by the PHP script. Well, that's all very well, but it's not doing what we want it to do yet. Let's take that out, and we'll create this script. Now this script is going to be embedded within HTML. And we're going to make this look quite similar to the last page in format. Need to put a heading there and a line break. And now we're going to start the PHP that's going to be embedded within this page. This is going to work in a very similar way to the example in the last chapter. We're going to connect using the MySQL connect function, and then we're going to select the database using the MySQL select DB function, and then we're going to define our query. Now this is going to be a little different because we're doing something rather more complex than simply getting all the records from shops, which is what we were doing in the last chapter. This time, well, for a start, let's limit the fields that we're taking back from shops. So instead of selecting star from shops, let's say we select only certain fields, in this case shop's name and the phone and their email address and the website, just enough for the user to be able to contact whatever shops they get as their search results. Now our query is starting to go over the extent of the line that we can see in our text editor, so let's simply pop that onto the next line with an indent. As I explained earlier, PHP will treat this as all one line because there's no semicolon right here. Until it hits a semicolon, it treats everything as just one line. So after that part of the SQL string, we're going to specify which records it's going to return. The way we do that is we're going to specify that it's going to return only records where the name field is like this pattern, and this pattern is going to be our name variable. These quotes look a little tangled because we need to use quotes within the SQL string but we need to use the kind of quotes that PHP won't interpret as the closing of its own string. So we use single quotes, just so the two technologies don't get mixed up. And we need to close the string so that we can put in the variable name, so that this little bit of text that I've highlighted here is interpreted as the value of the variable name rather than just as $name, which wouldn't be very useful. Something else we're going to add here is some wildcard characters, which for SQL is the %sign. We're going to put those inside the SQL inverted commas, but outside the PHP ones. And what these %signs are going to do is it's going to make the query find all instances where this variable is found anywhere within this field. So any number of characters could come before or after the value of this variable. So that the user will be able to match, for instance, all shops whose names contain the letter E, if they so wished, or all shops whose name contain only part of their name, rather than having to specify the whole name. So that's our SQL string, and then we need to run that string using the MySQL query command, and then we're going to run through the records that this query finds in a very similar way to the way in which we did in the last chapter. We're going to fetch an associative array for every row of the results, and then we're going to use list and each functions to go through each of the columns. This works in exactly the same way as the last chapter. One thing that we're going to add, and this is just a design thing, is we're going to put a bold tag to either side of the actual field value. This is just to make the values stand out from the names of the fields, so that it's easier to read. And then we're going to put a line break at the end there, in between each field, and then we're going to put an extra line break in between each record. Then we need to close both those while loops with the curly brackets, and we'll need a close PHP tag as well. Another line break, and let's put in a very simple little hyperlink. And all this is going to do is allow the user to go back and do another search once they've read their results, if they so wish. All that remains is to close the body tag and the HTML tag, and let's save our script. And we'll test this in the browser. We go back to search by name HTML. Let's test this out by entering some data here. So let's try the word record, because a lot of these record shops contain the name record within the name. Now let's see. Explosive records been returned, rhythm records, deeper beat records, and bleep bleep records. All of these contain the text record within their names. So we can conclude that our search script is working pretty well. We haven't tested it. We're going to go on to that in the next movie. But it's doing pretty much what we want it to do. If we take a look at the source of this page, then as we can see, all it returns is the data. None of the PHP script is seen by the browser, as I've explained before, right in Chapter 1, but it's useful to see a good example of that. In our next movie, we're going to look at the things that are wrong with this script and the ways in which, by entering some invalid data, we can end up with some unexpected and unwanted results.